My name is Reverend Dr. Alice Reid, and I am the spiritual leader for the Center for Spiritual Living, Capistrano Valley. I'm glad to be here with you today. I will share with you that this month's theme is What If? Imagining the Path Ahead. And all month, you will be treated with a tag team of ministers as Reverend Karen and I take turns speaking on Sundays. So it should be really interesting. You'll get different perspectives. You'll hear some different voices. And all the talk titles are from the song you just heard. So it's going to be an interesting month. I will tell you that as we were planning this month, the Ecclesiastical team was really excited about this topic. It was just full of energy and newness. And yet again, just yesterday, the world shifted. And I had to rethink my remarks this morning. How could I talk about imagination, pure imagination, without sounding a little Pollyannish, without diving into some kind of spiritual bypass or ignoring some of the things that people are really feeling right now? Like many of you, yesterday morning, I woke up early, a lot earlier than I usually do on a Saturday, and I looked at the news, and I felt a heaviness and a sadness come over me, and I found it really hard to shake. War of any kind, even with the best of motives, is difficult to fathom, to hold, and to face, and to notice in our lives. There's so many innocents that get caught in the crossfire when nations fight. And so when I learned about the conflict in the Middle East, and the U.S. and Israeli forces had bombed Iran, I really felt it, and there was a part of me that was very cognizant that this conflict is a little close to home, just by association, because of this beautiful community that we share space with. And so I hope that you'll join me as we hold our Baha'i friends especially close right now. Iran is homeland to many Baha'i, and I'm sure the conflict in the Middle East is really personal for those that have family and friends in that region. And so I want to start today with a prayer, a beautiful prayer that one of my colleagues wrote, Reverend Cynthia James. And I invite you to center yourselves as I share this prayer with you, and take a breath and allow that breath to really bring you into this space right here. Perhaps lower your gaze or close your eyes and take these words and this prayer as your own. Holy Presence, source of life beyond every name, every nation, every border, we hold the Middle East in sacred light. The mothers, the fathers, the children waking to sirens, the elders who have seen too many wars, the young who deserve futures filled with possibility, not fear. Wrap every trembling heart in protection. Guard the innocent. Shield the vulnerable. Comfort those who have lost homes, loved ones, or hope. May wisdom rise in leaders. May restraint override retaliation. May courage mean choosing peace over pride. May the ancient lands, so rich with history, faith, and devotion, remember their deeper story of shared humanity. For the Jewish families, for the Muslim families, for the Christian families, for the Baha'i families, for every tribe, every language, every lineage, we affirm the truth that no life is expendable. No child is an enemy. No mother's tears are political. Where there is hatred, breathe understanding. Where there is vengeance, plant compassion. Where there is despair, ignite a fierce and tender hope. Strengthen aid workers, guide peacemakers, soften hardened hearts, interrupt violence before it spreads. May humanity awaken. May love prove stronger than fear. May peace, real, lasting, and just peace, take root in the soil of this sacred region. And may every soul there feel, even now, that they are not forgotten. We are all connected. We are all one family. Amen. I acknowledge that some of you may feel angry, some of you may feel confused or hurt, fearful, while others may be even hopeful of an end to an oppressive era, an oppressive era in the Middle East. And I honor any place that you might find yourself in this conflict. I won't attempt to convince you of politics or bypass your experience with platitudes or toxic positivity. Instead, I want to offer you suggestions on how we meet this challenge and all the challenges that life seems to face and present with us in this world that we're living in with our spiritual practice. When the world gets heavy, it's tempting to disengage, to fall into denial, or to fall into despair. But true spiritual practice invites us to courageously and boldly stand in the tension that exists between reality and possibility. And we can stand in that sacred space without abandoning either. When life gets difficult, there's a temptation to check out and distract ourselves. I mean, the Middle East is 8,000 miles away. And here in Southern California, in San Clemente, the sun is shining, the air is warm, and it's relatively peaceful. Now, many of you know that I'm planning a pilgrimage to the Camino de Compostela in Santiago. I'll be doing that this fall, and so in preparation for that, I'm walking. And so yesterday I walked. I walked along the Aliso Summit Trail that overlooks the ocean, and as I was walking, I was thinking about how stepping up our spiritual practice is much like a spiritual pilgrimage. We have to set aside our fears and move forward with our faith, despite the unknowns and the uncertainty of the journey ahead. And like walking towards a destination, we can move our thinking towards what we want while still being present in the here and now. Similar to not seeing the entire journey before you, you can trust that source and spiritual principle, even though you have little evidence of that source, even though you don't know how it's going to outpicture, is calling you forward. Each action, each prayer is an opportunity for us to move forward toward something that is holy and without any certainty, without a map, without knowing exactly how it's going to work out, without knowing how things will settle again. We can't know how our spiritual practice is going to outpicture. We can't know the shape that it'll take, and it can be very disconcerting in a world that demands certainty, that demands to know. But that is exactly why we practice. And that is how the pilgrim walks, trusting their faith, trusting the call that brought them forward. And then with our spiritual practice, it's to trust the call to live spiritually, to live our values, to live our principles. And when our hearts are heavy and fear grips us, that is the time to lean into our spiritual practices and to imagine something greater than the sum of all the world's fears. It's not to pretend or bypass or to ignore the suffering in the world. No, when we lean into our spiritual practice, when we move forward as spiritual pilgrims, when we choose to manage and to listen to our hearts and our minds and to trust that we are being divinely guided, when we choose to practice our spiritual practices of prayer and meditation, of education, of spiritual community, when we choose to do all those things, we are taking a step in faith. There's a distinct difference between wishful fantasy and spiritual imagination that is grounded in principle. Wishful fantasy says kind of wistfully, I wish peace would just happen. Spiritual imagination calls something greater forward. It holds us to a vision of peace, not just a denial of suffering, but as directed spiritual practice, directing our soul and directing our thinking, our behavior, and our actions. If we don't consciously imagine peace, then almost by default, we are susceptible to the collective unconscious that acquiesces to and often justifies war. So today, as we start this month of what if we start this month of what's possible, and today looking at pure imagination, not denying the conditions of the world, but directing our hearts and our minds to a more beautiful world we know is possible. And we don't imagine that peace instead of our grief. We walk through our peace and our grief. We walk through our grief holding peace. We don't expect healing to vanquish challenges. We don't expect challenges to go away. We expect healing because we are connected to Source, and Source is directive and it's creative. We do not embody possibility away from our current realities. We embody possibility within the reality that we are living in. This is not magical thinking. We are engaging bona fide, principled, spiritual faith. And as people of faith, we are invited to exercise this teaching in real time right now. Much like the pilgrim that just walks out their journey day after day, trusting the path before them, we are invited to consciously walk through what is happening in the world, trusting that we can walk this out with God, that we are not walking it out alone. And it is our faith that fuels our spiritual imagination and lifts our spirits and reminds us that we are all in this human experience together. We can hold grief. We can acknowledge real pain and at the same time have the courage to lift our minds and our hearts to a bigger vision grounded in spirit. We can trust in principle to strengthen our hearts without diminishing our awareness. So mic's not working? Sorry? Got it. I'm sorry I didn't bring a lot of levity this morning. It was a hard day yesterday. Anytime that we choose violence, whether we personally choose it, whether the country we live in chooses it, it's always a difficult choice. I don't imagine it's taken lightly. And our opportunity today is to make our own choices on how we're going to lean in. How are we going to move into this space that we currently find ourselves in, practicing what we teach, practicing what we talk about. So my invitation to you this week is to see this as your own spiritual pilgrimage. It is an opportunity for you to continue to put one foot in front of the other, to continue to walk the path of peace and principle, to know what you stand for, and to trust that when you lean into your spiritual practices, that it will strengthen your resolve. It will give you the courage you need to imagine a more perfect world, a more beautiful world, a world where we see each other's humanity instead of our disagreements. Every journey, whether it is our spiritual path or the physical pilgrimage that I will be taking in the fall, every journey starts with one step forward. As I am gearing up, there's lots of things I would lean towards doing, all the habits that I have in my lifestyle, but I must walk if I'm going to walk that long journey in Spain, which is about 500 miles. And I don't know if I can do it. I have no idea if I'll make it. But I have to try. I have to try because I'm called towards it. And I know that each one of you, because you are sitting here or because you are listening online, you are called too. You are called to spiritual practice. You are called to spiritual living. You are called to a world that can work for everyone. And that may sound so far away from where we are right now, but I don't believe it's impossible. If I look at the trajectory of human evolution, we have come so far. And now is not the time to give up. Now is the time to increase your practice, to lean in, to know what it is that you value, to allow yourself to walk this out. Even when you forget, even when you get caught up. There's a very tempting practice of getting caught up in the media. And so I have this simple practice to leave you with. You don't have to solve the conflicts in the Middle East. But what you can do, right where you are, wherever you find yourself, is to refuse to let social media be the blueprint for your imagination. And to lean into what it is you hold true. And to actively imagine humanity at all sides of any conflict you find yourself in, whether it's on the 5 in traffic, or whether you are fighting with a neighbor, or if you have diametrically opposed politics, there's a human being on both sides of that conflict. And when you can remember that, when you can lean into that, that's spiritual practice. You don't have to go up on a mountain or walk 500 miles in Spain. You can do it right where you are. But you have to make a choice. And you have to take the first step. And I guarantee you that after you take the first step, the second step is easier. And you will be supported by Spirit. Because this is what the world is calling forward. It is not calling forward bombs and conflict and strife. It is calling forward to us to help to be that place where Source can outpicture itself in all its beauty and love and freedom and perfection. And while we may not see it right before us right now, I know that it's possible. And I trust that our spiritual imagination, grounded in principle, can begin the walk towards that more beautiful world we know is possible. Thank you very much. And so let us pray. Let us hold this beautiful ideal. The ideal that each human is precious. The ideal that Spirit has imbued itself within each one of us. The ideal that it just takes a moment to change our mind, to align ourselves with peace, to align ourselves with love, to align ourselves with power from the One, so that we can be in power with rather than in power over. And so I know for each one in the sound of my voice that we are divinely connected through our humanity and our divinity, and that as we walk out this week, we remember both, we respect both, we honor both, we acknowledge that there is divinity and humanity, that there is pain and there is possibility. And we choose to create a mental blueprint of peace and unity and harmony. And we keep putting one foot in front of the other, asking for guidance, trusting our imagination and our insight, choosing over and over again. Peace, peace, peace. And so it is with a humbled and surrendered heart that I speak this word, that I give it back from whence it came to the divine inspiration of love and light. And I know that each one is a causative factor in creating this world that can work for each one. And together we say, and so it is.